Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. After a long wait, the paranormal hunter from below is back. David Harbour stars as the man himself, Hellboy, in Hellboy, where he teams up with Sasha Lane and Daniel Day-Kim to battle an evil sorceress played by Milla Jovovich. Let's take a look. Everybody, please welcome from Hellboy, Daniel Day-Kim, Sasha Lane, Milla Jovovich, and Hellboy himself, David Harbour. Hey.
Hi.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is amazing.
I'm telling you that house needs
What?
to be on a road trip.
What
that
does?
chicken house
The chicken house?
would be so great to take on a road trip.
Chicken house. What's a chicken house?
You know, like
Where are
the
we?
Baba
What's
Yaga
happening?
house.
Oh,
the
that
Baba's
house.
on
Movie,
chicken
yes.
legs.
Yeah.
So all you have to
Oh, it's not one of
Yeah.
your scenes.
That's true.
David, you know, the massive success of Stranger Things happens, and then all of a sudden, you are Hellboy. How did that happen?
Well, it's like almost 3 years later, so it's not immediate. It wasn't. It took a little. It was a little rolling start.
For the sake of my lazy, unresearched question.
No. You're right. You're sort of right. I mean, as we were shooting season 2, I think they approached me and said, you know, do you want to do Hellboy? You want to be? We want to redo Hellboy, and I of course initially was like very excited and very nervous, and I was like, why are we redoing Hellboy? And their big pitch was that we're going to do something completely different with it. It's going to be violent and brutal in this, like, you know, apocalyptic, gnarly world, kind of bleak like the Dark Horse comics, and even in its color palette, kind of like, you know, grays and blues, with like Hellboy being the only red thing, or Excalibur being the only yellow thing, or the Blood Queen's cloak being the only red thing, or what, like just this interesting color palette and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, that sounds really exciting. Sign me up. And then they told me I was going to have to wear all this makeup and be in a makeup chair for a long time. And then
Like 4 hours every morning?
it was like 3, and then we got it down to about 2.5 as we were going. But it was it was pretty much most of the way like a solid 3. Wow. About an hour and 45 minutes for the face. And then a solid 10 minutes covering me in KY jelly before I slipped into a suit. That was the most fun part for everyone.
I got that
Well,
on my
that part
face.
you were used to.
That was
Got it on me.
nothing new to me.
Listen, we were all
Nothing new to
standing
me.
outside his trailer waiting for the KY to get on. You guys get ready. The KY's going on.
The moans and groans right about that
Oh my
thing.
God, I should never talk.
Now, with Stranger Things, you were, you know, the sheriff in Stranger Things is relatively schlubby, laid back. He's a big drinker.
Hey. No,
He's
no,
not-
I agree.
Yeah.
Just schlubby.
I agree.
Did you have to get in some pretty good shape for Hellboy, or was most of that in the suit?
Yeah, you know what's funny is like the aesthetics of the suit are the aesthetics of the suit. That is not my body. I've been like going around on a tour trying to tell people, because there have been
He's
a lot
so
of
modest.
articles that come out where it's like, yes, I did do a lot of working out, but there are these articles, these clickbait articles. Listen, media, I've got something to say to you, media. There's a lot of articles that come out which literally have my pudgy body next to that Hellboy outfit, and they go, look at David Harbour's transformation. And in the article, they explain that it's not my body, but come on. Come on, media. You know what you're doing, media. So I've had to spend a lot of time explaining that's not my body, and I will continue to, but
The Not My Body tour.
the Not My Body tour. Like, I am the anti, you know how there's a big thing in our culture where we just love, I do too. I don't really understand why, but being on the receiving end is very funny. We love the actor transformation, but we love it mainly when it's physical. Like, we love when Christian Bale gets like super skinny and then gets like super fat to be Dick Cheney. And I'm like, what is that thing? But unfortunately, you don't get it with me. You just get like a rubber suit. But I did do a lot of training for strength and power to be able to do the stunts. And there's like a lot of stunts in the movie. And my joints are not what they were in my early 20s.
And to be able to do them with the suit on, I would imagine, too.
Yeah,
right?
that was really hard too. Yeah. It was, and it's exhausting. I mean, you're in a suit, it gets hot, sweat has to come out somewhere. And so it would pour out of my horns. It would pour out of my eyes and my horns. We'd like.
It looked like he was crying, but it was actually sweat coming out of his eye hole. Right?
That is absolutely correct.
When I was like on the floor and he was just like leaning over me, I was supposed to be all sentimental, but it was just like dripping, and I was.
Really,
It's real great.
really gross.
She didn't want to make you feel bad on the day.
Really
yeah,
gross.
I am.
Decided to do it in front of everybody.
How gross was the bodysuit at the end of the day?
It smelled like roses. Yeah, it was gorgeous. No, it was the worst thing you've ever smelled in your whole life. Like, because I'd be in it for 14 hours running around in some field flipping and sliding and stuff, and then they'd peel me out of it, and it would be like, because
Isn't that
KY...
a thing? Like everybody came to smell the bodysuit at the end of the day just to like see if it was different.
I don't remember if that was a thing. That might have been your thing, but I don't remember that actually being...
David's gone. Let's go smell the suit.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of feel like I remember it being a thing. Like, oh, did you
I don't know what
smell a
movie
suit
you
today?
did, but KY and sweat surprisingly create a gel-like paste that makes it more difficult for the suit to come off. So it required a little effort getting it off, and then once it was out in the world, yeah, it was an extravaganza of the senses.
Did you ever have a moment with the suit or getting the suit off where you had to like compose yourself because you were like, get this fucking thing off of me, or were you like, oh no, I'm good, I can handle this?
Oh yeah, no, like every 2 hours for like 4 months. There were days, it's funny, like there was a day about 30, because they call them applications. So we did about 65 applications of the makeup. So about 30 applications in, about a month and a half of daily, you get kind of like overwhelmed, and then you realize that you have over half left. You have 35 more applications, and there was one day when I walked in and I sat in the makeup chair and I just said, I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. And they had to, it was like a breakdown, and they had to like sit me down and go like, it's gonna be okay, we just breathe, we get through it. Because it's overwhelming to think that, because it really is like, it starts to feel very, like you're in a coffin. You're in like a latex coffin the whole day, and it's hot and it's uncomfortable. But
bring on Hellboy 2. You are a wonderful villain. I think you're so good at playing a villain. What made you take on this role? Do you like playing characters like this?
Well, listen, I think most actors will tell you it's super fun to play the bad guy because there's so many layers to character and how did they turn evil, and they were good at some point, they must have been. But this movie was extra special for me too because we had just closed the whole Resident Evil franchise, and thank you. Are you clapping because you're happy we finished it?
finally.
And but I felt kind of like Jim Halpert from The Office because I was like, what am I gonna do with all of this useless information in my brain now? Like, I know how to do all this wire work. I know how to like help on a stunt film. Like, I'm really good at like, wearing crazy suits and doing 5 hours of makeup and all that stuff. And now what am I going to do? And then Hellboy came up, and I was like, this is so great because the character's so different from Alice. She's glamorous. She's a leader. She's a queen. And I got to do a British accent, which was really a big challenge for me. I'd never done that on screen before. So
is that something that happens to actors when after they do action, if they ended up liking action, that it just becomes kind of an addiction because there are so many more practical things that you can attach yourself when you're doing action?
Well, there is a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, let's say, for David, for instance, I mean, you just on a normal movie, like dinner with the family at home movie, you're still working 15 hours a day, but then you have like 40 pounds of prosthetic suit on, and you're still working 15 hours a day, but you're starting 3 hours earlier. So you're ending up working like 18, 20-hour days to get it all done. And it is very challenging. I mean, I know I've gotten super claustrophobic on films when I've had to be like underwater or doing things. I mean, it gets scary sometimes. I mean, people don't understand that you really do have to do these things. I mean, action films can be dangerous and can be scary. I mean, I guess that's why they're so fun to watch.
Yeah, I guess some of the most simple things that we watch in an action film, like someone being underwater, we're like, oh, this is great, ha, ha, ha. But that actor was probably underwater for 16 hours that day. Up and
for weeks.
Trying to get that take done.
Yeah.
And so was the crew, and you got to wonder, where are they going to the bathroom? Because they're all in there all day long.
Where?
Well, it's all sterile, though.
That's what they always tell us, isn't it?
Sasha, I'm such a fan. You know, when American Honey came out in 2016, I thought that was the most beautiful film of the year. And it was your introduction to the world in so many ways. And it's amazing to get to see you do something like this, which is completely different. What has that been like for you to go from something that was kind of improvised and very free form in a lot of ways to something like this, which is a big action movie?
Well, thank you first. Also, it was crazy. Yeah, like, I mean, I was like little indie darling, and I was like with like bears and just on a road and like stuffed in a van and like just kind of lived that life. So to go from that to like so many people and like just, yeah, there was like action, there was green screen, there was costumes.
You're
and
fighting,
yeah, everyone around, and just like, I mean, at least it was more safe, I feel like, on this one, even though it was scarier, but like...
More safe on this than American Honey?
Yeah, but we just don't want to go there, you know?
Sure, I got you, yeah.
But it was, like, I was terrified. I, like, every day was just like, me? I mean, I don't know. It just felt like a lot of pressure, but in a good way. Like, I feel like none of these guys made me feel like a loser, so that was nice.
You rocked it.
Thanks. Amazing. Are you kidding?
Did you have to do some training for a lot of the fight scenes?
Yeah, which was like my favorite part. I love someone who's like super tough and yelling at me and telling me like that was awful, you should do it again. And I'm like, yes. It's like it builds. I don't know.
That David?
I wish. I was super impressed with her in the stunt stuff. I mean, she's like, you're extremely agile and like could jump around. I mean, that last fight that we have where you're doing all that stuff, she learned it in like, took me forever and I was just falling over myself. Yeah, so I was just impressed. I wasn't the one yelling. Maybe it was the stunt people.
No, it was a stunt coordinator.
Yeah.
It was like great, but I like loved, because it was kind of like you said, like you work so many hours a day. You're also performing and it's a lot and it's a lot on you. So kind of being able to like physically release some of that is like exciting, and plus just like punching things and people and like showing up David, because I'm like, okay, well, you have just a big ass hand. Oh, yeah. A big hand.
No, it's okay. You can curse.
Oh my God.
That was adorable, but yes, you can curse.
Yeah.
Daniel, you and David have a wonderful rapport together, and I'm wondering if you guys had that before you even started shooting, or if a lot of that was the script.
Well, we didn't know each other before the movie, but we're both from here. Like, we both started our acting careers here, and I can't believe we're actually in the old Tower Records building as we speak, right? But we're both theater actors from New York, so we have a lot of friends in common. So as soon as I met him, I knew how he was going to be working, and I knew that he was going to take his work very seriously. So just to start with that foundation we were off to a good start.
Is that a fear when you get onto a movie like this, like a big action movie where there's a lot of moving parts? You really want everybody to be taking it seriously because you really have to make your day and it's a lot of work.
Well, that's the danger, is that, you know, people come into an action movie or a comic book movie and they don't take it seriously, and the actors don't they don't take their work seriously. But there's real character work going on. Like, you know, everyone here was really, you know, exploring things and trying to find some depths to the characters, and I think that just makes for a better movie.
David, you know, the Neil Marshall, the director of this, is I think one of my favorite action horror directors working right now. He's done a lot of Game of Thrones.
The Descent.
I was gonna.
The Descent.
You beat me to it. Maybe the best horror movie of the last 20 years.
The
in my
Descent.
opinion. It's so great, and he's incredible doing this. How did he come on board? When did you start working with him? Was he on board before you jumped on?
Yeah, he was on board with them before I came on. And, you know, it was great. I mean, he does the monster stuff really well. It's like his sort of monsters and scares and like that. That's the sort of thing where, in terms of a superhero story, like the way that we wanted to approach it differently was to make it more of a monster movie and to make it more of a horror movie.
It's like an Excalibur monster movie in a lot of ways, which is sort of exactly what Marshall has been doing his whole career.
Yeah, exactly. And also with practical effects. Like those creatures in The Descent are a bunch of people in leotards and like, you know.
Why jelly?
Yeah, it's like seriously, I think it is. Like it's like glistening creatures crawling across a cavern floor. So yeah, I think he loves practical effects and he loves the world of monsters. He loves the world of scares. And so, you know, he brought all of that and that was great.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of questions from our audience, about 6. So let's get started with these guys. Who's first? Who's a microphone?
Hi, here.
Right here. Who? Right here. You, sir.
Hi. So my question's for David.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering.
Is it about Stranger Things?
It is not yet.
Oh, yeah. Wow, I got thrown by the sweatshirt.
Yeah. My question is just, from going from something like Stranger Things to this, what was the most important factor you took from the Hellboy character? Was it the comics or looking at other movies? How did you adapt him and make him your own in the new movie?
That's a great question. For me, it really was going back to the comics. And, I went directly back and read all of the Dark Horse comics, and I talked to Mike Mignola. And I even did this thing where I read them in order of Hellboy's trajectory, and I would cut out frames of them and, like, certain gestures that he makes or expressions that he has or body positions that he had, I wanted to mirror direct from the comics. And even in terms of fashioning the look, and the coat was very important to me. There's even little like iconic rips. He always has a rip on his shoulder, which we recreate in the movie at a certain point. It gets ripped in the so there's lots of different things from that I wanted to recreate. And even the whole fact that his face has all these potch marks on it, which we interpreted as scars. He's much more scarred and much kind of gnarlier. But I really wanted, almost like a ballet dancer, to have like first position, second position, third position, to have these sort of pre-structured positions, and then to fill them, with the emotion and the color underneath that. But the way I wanted him to be different was that I was really interested in this concept of destiny that happens in the comic book. He's destined to be the beast of the apocalypse, right? And I've never found destiny a compelling idea, because I'm always like, okay, so you're destined for that. You just say like, forget it, and you walk away, right? So I consider destiny to be almost like genetic imperative, right? Like we all have impulses or desires that feel very intrinsic to us, that if we were to stop those impulses, it would take away something from our lives to do something else. And so in that way, I wanted to get underneath what becoming the beast of the apocalypse genetically might mean, like what it would be to feel this violence towards human beings, what it might feel to. And I wanted him to be a brutal guy, struggling with this innate brutality that then he cuts off with his conscious will. But that was like really important kind of character core for me.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, man. Good question.
I have a quick Stranger Things question before we move on. You guys are coming into the third season of the show, right? In just a few months.
That is correct, sir.
After the first season, you delivered that incredible speech that was just so supportive, and you were clearly such a great leader for the show and for everybody involved, both crew and cast. What is it like as you guys move into the third season? Do you find that changes at all? I mean, the kids are kind of growing up.
Yeah. The simple answer is yeah. It's a funny thing that particular. I mean, I think anyone who has kids, and I have 5 of them.
You have 5? Oh, just in the show? You mean the cast, or do you actually have personally 5?
Come on, keep up.
Okay.
Anyone who has kids will probably tell you that it is that time when they're like 11 and 12, when they're sort of most dewy in love with you and looking up to you, blah, blah, and then they start to enter this teenage phase of rebellion and resistance and stuff like that. Like we live that out in real time. I mean, these kids are, they are, and on top of that, they're becoming huge celebrities and rock stars, and Finn's doing concerts and Millie's doing fashion shoots, and it's like, I do feel sometimes like a struggling dad, like being like, kids, dinner time, kids, come on, and but you have to. It's all a process, and we put it all into the show. It's like all a process of Hopper letting go, and I think all these feelings that we're feeling, we keep putting into the show, and you'll see it. The show continues, as you see in the trailer. Like the kids are growing up, like romance is things are starting to happen, and like it's gonna get weirder for Hopper, and it continues to get weirder for him. So we just kind of pour all that stuff into the show. But it's weird when you work with people that are genuinely becoming themselves in front of you.
Next question.
Hi, guys. My name is Markel. I was wondering, since you all taken on characters, I'm a huge fan of the comics. In your research of the characters, what did you find that attracted you to that character, and what do you think you brought out to show in the movie about the character that was unique, that was either similar or the same from the similar or different from the comics?
Daniel Day Kim.
Sure. I think for me, there were a couple things. One of the things that really interested me in this character was that he was Asian. I hadn't seen many Asian superheroes on screen or in the comic books, so the fact that Mike wrote someone into that universe that looked like me was a big selling point. And, you know, beyond that, like character-wise, I really like the fact that my character, Daimyo, has a part of himself that he really works hard to hide. You know, and I feel like all of us have that a little bit. Like, we have a public face for everybody, but then there's something that we're either guilty or shameful about showing or just uncomfortable with. And that's his story about kind of a self-realization, a self-actualization, so that he can integrate all these parts of him and be at peace with who he is. And that's a pretty cool journey, I think. Sasha?
Well, I feel like, I mean, most people were focused on the fact that she has red hair and she's Irish. And I'm like, well, I mean, she also was kidnapped by fairies and hears voices. And I think that's really cool. I relate to that one more, as well as in the comics, she is the love interest of Hellboy. And I think with this is so cool because I feel like the love is just as strong, but in a different way. And I think that's something special as far as, like, you know, he's fulfilling his destiny or going about it and learning about it. And, I mean, we all kind of are. And she's also dealt with both realms as far as, like, the world with all the monsters and all of that. I mean, she has her own little stuff, but she's kind of, like, settled in it. And through that, she helps Hellboy, like, kind of really find himself and really be able to embrace himself and love himself despite everything going on. And I think that's more of the core of her, as far as, like, there is that love connection, but in a way that's much stronger than just, like, thinking is cute, you know? You're cute, but...
I really love your answer. I don't think I have an issue with it. I mean, building on that, because that was one of the things that was important to me too. Was like, it's interesting to have it be a different form of love because, you know, one of the things that I thought about Hellboy, and again, it's my own creative process. Like, you do have something and you start to play with it and you have the creator's intention, then you start to riff off of that. And my own thing with Hellboy as related to the Destiny piece was that some of your genetic impulses are going to be tied up in your sexuality. And so some of what he longs for as a beast is evil in a sense. I mean, he longs for apocalyptic things. So in a sense, his attraction to the villainess is much more interesting to me genetically or sexually, whereas like his association with human love is much more confused. And I think that's what we sort of explored with the father as well, was like he sort of has an adopted kid syndrome where he doesn't understand why he was chosen to be loved while others are abandoned, and also why others are hunted. So in that way, he questions even what the idea of human love is. Because he's a demon, right? I mean, like, he doesn't really understand. Like, we intrinsically are just like, oh, I love you, man. I love you, too. And we, like, kind of understand it. But, like, to him, it's like, what does that mean? And I think that Sasha's character teaches him that. And I think Ian's character teaches him that. And that the Blood Queen offers him a different perspective on love, or what it is to love yourself. And those paradoxes sort of play throughout. And that was very interesting to me as well.
Yeah, for my character, Nimue, you know, something that I really love about her, I mean, in the graphic novel, she's just really dark and, you know, the queen of the underworld. And, you know, I love the idea of being able to play this really powerful but glamorous sort of figure. What I loved about the script was that, you know, she has these really admirable ideals of bringing the human world and the world of monsters together to live in peace. And she gets gruesomely betrayed for that. And when she's put back together 5,000 years later, of course, she wants to bring humanity down. But at the same time, when she sees Hellboy, she does see this monster who's working for humans who all despise him. And she's like, why? You know, I tried to come in peace to them, and they speared me through the heart, decapitated me, and buried me alive. And, like, you're going to continue protecting them, and they don't even, like, your beautiful horns are gone. You can't even show yourself for who you really are. Like, why don't you just be you? Which is actually a really positive message.
I agree. I mean, I think the paradox that runs throughout the film, which to me is, like, amazing, is the first scene you see with Hellboy and his dad. He's helping him shave his horns, and he's telling him how much he loves his face. And that contradiction is constantly throughout the film. Is like, I mean, there's also a contradiction of wanting your son to be a serial killer, basically. Like being like, how you doing today? You feeling all right? Here's a gun. Like, go out and really kick some ass. It's like that paradox too plays on. But also this idea where it's like, I love you, the you inside of you. Now let's get rid of the things that make you demonic, right? And then she offers him a chance to do something else. But I think that you see his journey throughout the thing is that maybe his dad is right. That maybe there is something about him actually something about him like pushing down his own nature that actually makes him more him than him. It's a funny idea. I mean, it's something where I don't have the answers to any of these things, but it's an interesting way to present a conundrum.
There's so many gray areas in this movie, which I think is wonderful. It's like, yes, Hellboy makes the quote-unquote right choice, and he kills me, but at the same time, he suppresses himself, too. So, like, in a sense, is it good? Is it bad? Yes, I guess it's good for humanity. He's not going to destroy everybody. But, at the same time, it's like, it's hard. Again, we usually teach our kids to be yourself, be proud of who you are, not to like shave their sweet little horns. Yeah.
And the intensity to which we're talking about this, clearly it is an Oscar bait movie. Clearly it is an indie drama. We're positioning ourselves. No, it's a big fun monster movie. You know what I mean? Where we're kicking ass and doing stuff.
You had a physical transformation, like it seems like you're going out for best actor nod here. There's all those before and after photos. I don't know. I am curious though, you've clearly done like an incredible amount of character work going into doing this, and a lot of that is on screen, but also there are limits to an action movie and what an action, I mean, that's also, those limits make them incredible and what's fun to watch, but there are limitations on what you as an actor get to do with all of your research and background. Does it still inform all of the decisions that we see on screen, whether we see literally some of the stuff that you've just talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this before in terms of relating to Hopper, and I just think, I mean, first of all, like, why not? Like, I get to do the greatest job in the world. It's like, what am I going to spend those hours sitting in the tent doing? Like, I could do crossword puzzles or like Candy Crush, and I do, but why not spend it like deepening the character? Why not spend it so you can see moments of this struggle and see my own particular arc? And I do feel like things like that pay off. I mean, I don't know in terms of a commercial success, but I do know that the way that I worked on Hopper was very different than what had come before it as a result of a new investment. And you don't see it on screen all the time, but you feel it. And I think that there's a lot of performances that you see where you can't quite put your finger on why you like it. I mean, there's a lot of people that have strong opinions about, I like this because of this, and I don't like this because of this, blah, blah, blah. But there's certain performances or certain things where you're like, I don't know, but I like watching it. And a lot of that can be the shadings of color that someone will spend just hours doing that you never see. And I think, I mean, not to say I'm a great, but like great painters or great poets or great writers, there's tons of revisions. There's tons of things that are left out. And I think in any piece of art, it's all about the time you put in sort of equals the resonance of what comes out, whether or not it's directly seen or not.
Next question.
Hi. Did you guys get to meet with the creator of Hellboy, Mike Mignola, and was he at all involved with the production or the character development?
Yeah, Mike was really involved. He was involved in the script writing process as well. He was there every day on set. We were free to come to him with any questions we had about the character. I think Mike was more involved in this Hellboy than he's ever been in any of the films before this, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was really excited that we were drawing directly from a lot of his stuff too, like the story of the Wild Hunt, and a lot of our stuff comes direct off the page, and so he was very involved. He was very involved, and he was very open to, talking about. And one of the most fascinating things I found was that I talked to him a little bit about the origins of the character, right? The origins of Hellboy for him, and if you see the old comics, like it came out of this one weird frame that he did, this picture of this weird demon, blah, blah, blah. But then as the character starts to grow, it took on this life where it had this voice and this sort of swagger and this whole thing, and would do things like an evil person would give a big speech about like da-da-da, and then he'd go like, you talk pretty great for some guy with no pants or whatever. You know what I mean? Like he would undercut a lot. And I wanted to know about that aspect. And he talked a lot about his dad, because I guess it comes from his dad. And it was less what he said, but more the way he talked about his dad that gave me a lot of insight into why he created this comic and what he himself was working through with it. And it was beautiful. Like, that's ultimately what you want in anything, is to have the creator's mind, and we literally had it right there.
And what I was super surprised about is that usually when you're working with a creator like that, they're very precious about their work. And, you know, if you want to make an adaptation or ask for a difference in interpretation, they're like, you know what, just stick with what I wrote. But he was the opposite. You know, I'm sure all of us had this experience where we would just go up to him and say, I'm thinking about this for the character. I'm thinking about this physicality. And he'd be like, yeah, go ahead, try it. And he was very, very open, and that was really refreshing.
Next question.
Hi, my question is to all of you. What was the most fun and exciting part about playing these characters? And did you have a chance to learn some new skills, maybe?
Well, I learned to do a British accent.
I think all three of us did.
I'm super proud of that. Are you kidding?
Yeah, no,
I was sitting in drama school, like right across the street here, like a little while ago, and I had a speech and accent class, and I was thinking to myself as I was learning a British accent, when the hell am I ever going to use this? Cut to 20 years later, I'm flying, I get this job, I have to fly 2 days later to England and start my British accent. So all that came in handy.
I was told to have a lazy mouth through that. I was like, oh, thanks. Jeez. But I did it. And on the action, obviously, it was really fun to like do a bunch of stunts and stuff. It's just always kind of cool to like jump off people's shoulders and stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I learned like a ton. I learned, basically the biggest thing I learned was like, you know, I had all these prosthetics, right? And this whole new face and new body and a right hand of doom and horns and all this stuff. And I was like, I can't just do what I do. Like, I can't be a human being. I have to be something larger than life. And that was very scary because I'm not used to that. But even when I would rehearse, I'd put like weights on my face and, you know, so I could feel the weight of the latex. But a lot of the expression required more effort. And then in and of itself, like, I wanted him to have a feel, you know, he's a bit of a vaudevillian too. Like, he's a big old red guy with like a hand that like knocks stuff. So there was like, you know, I work on all these skills that are like kind of outside of him to work on him. Like, you don't need to do any of this to actually work on Hellboy, but like I started like dancing, like doing things with dance, not just the crap I do in Stranger Things, but like actually like dancing, like Broadway kind of dancing, to feel a certain rhythm of the character.
You sure?
To feel it's my process, Milla. It's all, nobody wants to see that. But like, you know, these other skills that sort of made me larger than life. Like, I feel like Broadway musicals are sort of larger than life. People burst into song when they just feel things. And I felt like Hellboy had a certain quality of this where he had to be larger. He couldn't just like talk to people. And so in that way, the approach was.
Was there a moment when you realized that you had to express in a much bigger way when you were underneath the mask? Like,
Yeah,
did
like
you
the
put it
first
on and
makeup test.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the first makeup test, they covered my face in latex and they gave me the whole suit. And I was like, holy crap, I can barely move my face in this thing. It's not going to express the way that, like, when I'm talking to you.
Oh, you could tell right away.
And also even just like, oh, you can tell right away. And not only that, like, there's certain expression that just comes off when you're really close on a camera, if you just think something about another person or whatever, you can feel it almost off somebody's skin. And this, you can't. You're just behind a wall. And so you have to learn to work with that wall as opposed to thinking that you can just do what you do. Like it required a lot of different technique for me.
Did it affect your acting in other projects afterwards? Because you had spent so many months being like, okay, instead of just feeling this thing on camera, I have to like show exactly how I feel?
Yeah. Like, you know, one of my favorite things is, do you guys know the actor Frank Langella? Mm-hmm. So Frank Langella is like a legendary actor. I love him so much. I mean, he's like one of the greats of our profession, and he was Skeletor in He-Man Masters of the Universe. Yes. But it's funny to hear him. I heard him on a Netflix documentary talk about that, and I was like, it's just so funny the way I perceive things and then the way they actually are. Like, so I hear him talk about this, and I'm thinking, oh, it's Frank Langella. He's just gonna, you know, shit all over this and just be like, blah. And he talked about it as if he wished he'd played more Skeletor in his life. Like, the only thing he wished was that he played more Skeletor because he said that as an actor, he he's very subtle, and and that role, because of the prosthetics and because of the hood and the sword, it allowed him to be like larger than life, to the point where he went and talked to Joseph Campbell about lines from mythology and like did all this stuff, and allowed him to be an archetype as opposed to just a human being. And I was like, damn, Frank, like that is amazing. And that's exactly how I felt about this. I was like, oh, I'll be able to take this my whole life forward. But it is, you get to wear a mask, and in that it's liberating, and you get to spread wings that you never knew you had and get to do things that you never knew were in you.
You didn't find yourself on another set afterwards, and the director's going, David, you're Hellboy in it. Just turn it. You give it.
Yeah, a little bit on season 3. Duffers would be like, tone it down, Hellboy.
Next question.
Hey guys, my name is Evan. So you guys have worked on projects, Resident Evil, Stranger Things, whatever it may be, that are really focused with CGI. Are there any fun stories or things that you learned in those projects that you worked on that you carried over to Hellboy? Because it is CGI-centric.
You know, this film was actually, there was quite a bit of CGI, but most of it was practical effects, which is what I thought was so wonderful. I mean, people built all those sets that you saw, like a big part of them were real. David, his whole prosthetic, I mean, we were looking at Hellboy. I was looking at Hellboy when we were doing the scenes. So definitely, I mean, I know for me, for sure, I can bring all the experience of like working on like, for instance, the scene where I'm getting sewn back together, and there's this moment where she hasn't felt her limbs in 5,000 years, and I kind of did this like thing. And in my head, I was thinking they'll probably do some weird cuts in post to make it look kind of bizarre, so let me help them and just do something kind of strange so that it'll inspire them to like take it further. Do you know what I mean? So you kind of have a vision of what it could potentially be like, and you sort of help them bring that vision along.
That was actually one of my favorite scenes, is when you're half sewn together. You're just a torso
that was
watching
great, right?
television. I don't want to reveal what you were, but just the whole idea of that scene was just like out of nowhere and hilarious.
The channel.
Yeah. And you're talking to the giant like creature. Is just ridiculous. One more question.
Hi guys. How many hours does it take to How many hours does it take to Hellboy costume?
Put the makeup on and stuff. It's about 3 hours in the morning, which is really fun on a Monday morning when we start shooting at 6:30 a.m. That means I'm in the makeup chair at 3 a.m. Wake up, roll out of bed around 2:30, which is not
doing like a full 14, 15-hour day too, shooting, right?
And then your call time gets pushed and pushed, so by the end of the week. But yeah, it's not a reasonable hour to wake up, 2:30. But it's about 3 hours, and it's a whole process. And then to take it off, it was about half an hour, because they would print out a whole new mask every day, so they didn't have to preserve it. So they could literally kind of rip it off at the end of the night. And then they would do like a weird facial at the end of the night with this like vitamin E cream, which was the most disturbing part of the whole experience.
Was it to like get the jelly off or get the?
So they would take off the thing with because it's spirit gum or so, it's like some kind of glue, right? So they'd take it off as they go. They'd rip the whole thing off.
Burn your skin
and then it would burn. Yeah. So Joel would sit there, my makeup artist, and do a delicate vitamin E massage, and I was like, "This is
like, get it off!"
Yeah, I was like, "This is so creepy too. Like, stop it, man."
Guys, congratulations. I love the film. It opens this week. It opens Thursday in theaters everywhere, and people should go see it on IMAX because it's massive. It's Neil Marshall images. They look amazing. And give our guests a huge round of applause for coming to Build today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.